India and the United States are sending a strong message to China. The Quad military and geopolitical alliance is here to stay. In a strong statement backing this growing defense partnership with India, Washington says it is committed to India hosting the Quad summit later this year under Prime Minister Modi's leadership. The news comes days after an editorial in Xi Jinping's CCP's mouthpiece, The Global Times, which published an opinion piece highlighting the so-called divisions within the Quad alliance. In a counter to this Chinese narrative, Kurt Campbell, the US Deputy Secretary of State, backed India's leadership of the Quad, saying, quote, "The issue of the Quad was discussed between the two national security advisors. Both sides expressed a strong determination that, in fact, the Quad will be held before the end of this year. There is a strong determination on both sides to hold the Quad." Discussions on the Quad had also taken place last week as US President Biden had sent Kurt Campbell along with US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in what was the first high-profile diplomatic visit by the United States officials since Narendra Modi took oath for his third term as the Prime Minister of India. Apart from Prime Minister Modi, Sullivan had also held meetings with Indian leadership, including External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. The discussions focused on countering China by enhancing India-US cooperation not just in defense, but also in critical and emerging technologies, or ICET initiative, between the world's two biggest democracies. However, China is keen to sow doubts in the India-US relations, with Global Times saying, quote, "From the very beginning, joining Quad ran contrary to India's pursuit of strategic autonomy. In spite of Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar's pledge that the Quad grouping is here to stay, grow and contribute, what India has done so far is far from being a US obedient," unquote. Prime Minister Modi had committed to India hosting the next Quad summit when he met the leaders in Japan last year. The Quad summit was initially scheduled to be held in January this year, but it had to be delayed as the heads of state had prior commitments. Prime Minister Modi himself was gearing up to win his third consecutive term, completing a hat-trick of victories in the world's biggest election process, while even Democrat Joe Biden is facing increased domestic commitments and a tough challenge from a renewed Donald Trump and the Republicans. Now the Quad summit will be held later this year in India and maybe even after the US elections in November, though no official dates have been confirmed yet. Global Times in its editorial added, quote, "There are scholarly analysis questioning if India defanged the Quad. Some even put the blame on China for weakening Quad cooperation." Now, such narratives by the CCP mouthpiece are just a way to sow doubts in the minds of Indian and US allies in the ASEAN, especially Taiwan, Philippines and Vietnam. India is committed to deepening its defense alliances, especially after Chinese salami-slicing attempts along the LAC border in 2020, where tens of thousands of troops from the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force are locked in a standoff with the Chinese PLA. India's commitment to countering China can also be seen by New Delhi restoring 30 ancient names in Tibet in a counter to CCP imagining new names for India's Arunachal. Even the US is committed to growing defense and military ties with India. Now, this is quite evident. Earlier this year, the US Congress passed the Quad bill. Now, this Quad bill won an overwhelming 379 versus 39 majority in a near unanimous show of support across party lines to deepen military cooperation with India along with Australia and Japan. Meanwhile, Japan has near daily naval confrontations with the Chinese Navy as CCP claims Japan's Senkaku Islands near Taiwan. Tokyo has also recently ordered the biggest defense budget hike and military build-up since the World War II to guard against this growing Chinese expansionist threat. While Australia is also boosting its own military capabilities through a nuclear submarine program under AUKUS. The big question remains, is Quad united and committed in case China decides to spark a global conflict? Leave a comment, hit the like button and subscribe to Inconnect News for daily updates on current affairs and geopolitics.